I will be forever the myth.
You're the king of kings,
There's always a pecking order. The little peckers never mess with the big peckers. So I'm a rooster, and he's a chicken, so to speak.
Season 4, Episode 4 of the Bodybuilding Legends podcast is brought to you by our sponsors, Redcon One, Old School Labs, and Florida Alternative Medicine. All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Bodybuilding Legends show. I'm your host, John Hansen. And this season, Season 4, we are talking about the 1990 Mr. Olympia, the only drug-tested Mr. Olympia in IFBB history. So it was kind of a unique situation for that contest. And our guest on this episode is Rich Gaspari. And Rich Gaspari, of course, was one of the top bodybuilders of the 1980s. He took second place to Lee Haney 3 times from 1986 to 1988. And in 1990, Rich was a participant in the Mr. Olympia as he was back in those years, and he took 5th place. So we're going to talk to Rich about his career in bodybuilding. He had a great career. Started off very young, winning the Mr. Universe at only 21 years old. He was a training partner of Lee Haney. And then he started competing as a pro at only 22 years old, taking 2nd place in the 1985 Night of the Champions. And then, of course, as I said, he took 2nd to Lee Haney for 3 years in a row. So Rich has got some great stories. And, of course, Rich today is the owner of Gaspari Nutrition. And he's been with that company, with his own company for 20 years now. So he's a very big success story in the world of bodybuilding. So we're going to have a great conversation with Rich Gaspari. All right, I want to mention, of course, that we are brought to you by Redcon One. Everyone wants to be a champion. Everyone wants to be a best. And at Redcon One, they believe in working hard at achieving your goals. Whether you're killing it in the gym or you're running a 6-minute mile, Redcon One has something for those willing to put in the work. They have a premier clinically dosed pre-workout called Total War that is the perfect companion to your workout to give you that extra push to break through your mental and physical barriers. And then after workout, you can fuel your body with the revolutionary MRE. It is the only whole food complete meal replacement with protein from salmon, chicken, beef, and eggs. And it also has carbs from sweet potatoes and oats. And it contains 10 grams of fat from MCT oil. This is the best tasting complete meal you will ever have. So go to redcon1.com and try the very best sports nutrition has to offer. Redcon One, the highest state of readiness. And as a tribute to the show, you can enter the discount code LEGENDS and get a full 15% discount off your order. And I was just talking to Aaron Singerman, the owner of Redcon One, the other day, and he said they are coming out with a bar, a meal replacement bar. It's based on the MRE, so it's going to have protein from the same that's in the meal replacement. It's going to have salmon, chicken, beef, and eggs as the protein. And the carbs will come from sweet potatoes and oats, and it's all going to be in a bar. So that's going to be really great. So again, go to redcon1.com, enter the discount code LEGENDS, and get 15% discount. And we're also brought to you by Old School Labs. I have been with Old School Labs for several years now. This is the supplement company that draws on the wisdom of the golden age of fitness and bodybuilding to offer unique supplements for the discerning athlete. Old School Labs is the only brand that I use, trust, and associate my name with. They are the brand that I used to win the Masters Natural Mr. Universe in 2012, plus all the other photo shoots I've gotten ready for. They're also the company that sponsors Breon Ansley, who is the new 2017 Classic Physique Olympia champion. And they're sponsoring Sergio Oliva Jr., who is now preparing for the Arnold Classic. Check them out at oldschoollabs.com. And you can use the discount code LEGENDS12 and you'll get 12% off your order. Old School Labs, supplements that make sense. I got some bad news in the world of bodybuilding. Brad Harris passed away this last week. Brad was 84 years old. Brad Harris, of course, was a stuntman in the movies. I believe he was actually in Lou Ferrigno's Hercules movie, I think. And I think he was in the Sinbad movie that Lou Ferrigno made back in the 1980s, I think, or maybe 90s. I remember seeing pictures of Brad Harris back at Muscle Mag International years ago, and he was always in shape, always had the good abs. Seemed like an older guy back then even. He lived a long life, but unfortunately Brad Harris passed away this last week at 84 years old. All right, I also, this last week, was able to do an interview with Eddie Robinson, the great Eddie Robinson, 1989 USA champion and one of the top bodybuilders in the 1980s. He was on, I think, 87 covers of the Weider magazines. He had a great relationship with Joe Weider. I went to Largo, Florida, which is right by Clearwater, so it's not too far from Tampa. And I went there this last week and got to talk to Eddie for about an hour. And we did an interview about his whole career. So that will be coming up. That will be part of our podcast for the 1990 Mr. Olympia, because Eddie was in that contest. And he's got some great views on his career and on the drug use and how bodybuilding is run today. So we're going to have that interview up pretty soon. We've also got 2 more new interviews coming up for this podcast. We're going to talk to Peter Macguff this week, hopefully. Peter was one of the best writers ever in the bodybuilding world, and he worked for Joe Weider for many, many years. And he was at the 1990 Mr. Olympia. I remember one of the conversations I had with Peter. He said that he wrote a 10,000-word article about the 1990 Mr. Olympia, which, of course, they never put in the magazines because it was just too long. But 10,000 words, if you've ever written an article or anything, 10,000 words is huge. I mean, 3,000 words is a big, big article. So you can imagine how many thoughts he's had about the 1990 Mr. Olympia. So Peter will be a great interview, not only for the 1990 Mr. Olympia, but also for all the history of bodybuilding. He's been around a long time, longer than I have. We're also going to talk to the Iron Warrior himself, Mike Christian. We're going to do that interview also this week. So Mike will also talk to us about the 1990 Mr. Olympia, and that was probably one of Mike's best contest appearances ever. He took 4th place, but a lot of people, including Rich Gaspari, who we're going to talk to in a minute, Rich also thought, along with many other people, that Mike could have won that contest. And I believe Peter Macguff also said that too. So that'll be a very interesting interview with Mike Christian also. So all of these interviews with Eddie Robinson, Peter Macguff, and Mike will all be part of the 1990 Mr. Olympia series. And next week, we're going to be talking to the always controversial Mike Quinn. Mike was also part of that 1990 Mr. Olympia, and he's got some things to say. He's got a lot to say about bodybuilding today, so you'll definitely want to tune into that interview next week. And then my other big news this last week was my book is now on Amazon. It's called Bodybuilding Heroes and Legends. I think the last time we did a show here, I said that it was coming out in another week or 2, but it only took a couple days, and it was for sale on Amazon.com at the beginning of last week, I think. So it's selling really well. I've been on some of the bodybuilding forums talking about it, and I actually did a couple of interviews this week. I did one with, it's a podcast, and it's kind of like an iHeartRadio show. It's called the Jiggy Jaguar Show. I think I was on this guy's show, Jiggy Jaguar, about 10 years ago. So that was a pretty cool interview. We did that just a couple of days ago. So if you go to the Jiggy Jaguar Show podcast, you can check that out. He's also got his own website, jiggyjaguarshow.com. If you want to listen to that, you can check that out. And then coming up this week, I will be a guest on Advice Radio with the host of Bodybuilding Nerds podcast, BJ and Scott McNally. They were kind enough to have me on their show. It's called Advice Radio. So if you go to adviceradio.com, or I think they also have a podcast. And as I said, they're the host of the Bodybuilding Nerds Radio. So we had a great interview with them, and that'll be coming up this Tuesday, November 14th. So you want to check that out. Also, got some other news. Lou Ferrigno had a birthday this last week, and Lou is 66 years old now. So he still looks great. He's got the Ferrigno Legacy coming up, I think this weekend on the 18th of November. That show's getting bigger and bigger. So Lou is still in the bodybuilding game. He still looks great. He's a real fan of the old school bodybuilding. He loves talking about bodybuilding history. So hopefully we can definitely have him on the show one day. He said that if I ever get to see him in person, he wants to do the interview that way. So hopefully if I go out to California, I could hook up with Lou Ferrigno and do that interview. Also got some other news. Our guest last week, Robert Goldman, is going to get the Lifetime Achievement Award at the 2018 Arnold Classic. So that's a big honor. There's only, I think they started giving those awards out in 2000, and Joe and Ben Weider were winners of that award, along with Reg Park and Bill Pearl and Frank Zane, Lou Ferrigno himself. Rich Gaspari was also a winner, Lee Haney. So it's a very prestigious award to get. That's the one they give out on the evening finals of the Arnold Classic, and Arnold himself presents it. So that's a very prestigious award, and Robert Goldman, who holds the International Sports Hall of Fame every year at the Arnold Classic, is going to get that award. So congratulations to Dr. Goldman. I also want to mention we are brought to you by Florida Alternative Medicine, where age is just a number. If you want to feel great, optimize your energy levels, burn fat, and balance your hormone levels to maximize your potential, then go see the experts at Florida Alternative Medicine and Weight Loss. They have a certified and knowledgeable staff that will work with you to achieve your goals and get you the results you've been looking for. They have a wide range of services that ensure that you will not only feel and look amazing, but are also comfortable knowing they're there for you every step of the way. They offer very competitive pricing also, along with their quality products. Those are just a few reasons to give them a call. So call them for more information and experience firsthand what sets them apart from the rest. You can use the promotion code LEGEND and get a free consultation. Plus, you get 20% off any packages. So you can call them at 813-922-8939, or you can email them info@flalternativemeds.com. That's flalternativemeds.com. And again, their number is 813-922-8939. They are located, of course, in Tampa, Florida, but you can call them from anywhere in the United States. They will work with anybody in the continental United States. So no matter where you're at, they will do a blood test and they will see where your levels are at. And then they will recommend whatever they think you'd need to be at your optimum levels and to be at your total health. So I'd recommend you really call them 813-922-8939. All right, here is our interview with our guest of the week, Mr. Rich Gaspari. And we are talking about the 1990 Mr. Olympia. So here is our interview on the Bodybuilding Legends podcast. Enjoy. All right, welcome back to the Bodybuilding Legends podcast. And we have a very special guest this week, Mr. Rich Gaspari, who was obviously one of the top bodybuilders in the 1980s. He took second to Lee Haney 3 years in a row, and he was the first Arnold Classic winner. And today we're going to be talking about the 1990 Mr. Olympia. Rich, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be on the show, John.
I saw you last week. You got interviewed by Rick Drayson. That was a really interesting interview. You were out in California, I guess?
Yeah, I went out. I was out there working, doing some education, on the products with some of my accounts. So he's always asked me to do an interview with him, and I really like, his old school YouTube. So I went on the show to talk. He said it did very well. So
yeah, one thing I always like when you do your interviews, Rich, even though you've been in the game a long time like I have, you still seem really enthusiastic when you talk about those old stories.
Yeah, well, that's what he said. You're very, very vivid, and people feeling like they were in those days, that era. So I enjoy talking about it and really explaining some of the highlights that I had in my life at that time.
Yeah, and you said at the end, you said that Generation Iron is doing a thing about you too, right?
Yeah, one of the series actually started yesterday, October 18th. You can see it on Generation Iron, and also on Netflix. If you go to Netflix, look up Rich Gaspari, then you'll be able to see the first show that we did. So yeah, it's it's a cool thing, revitalizing. I mean, it's about me as the bodybuilder turned entrepreneur into becoming a businessman through the ups and downs of some of the things. I've been a top bodybuilder, and a little bit of my history. I got injured. Went from being this great bodybuilder to going bankrupt and starting Gaspari, growing that, and actually having some difficulties and, going through business bankruptcy, but now building the company back. So, I talk about these things, and I think it's important for people to know that, it's not about failure doesn't exist unless you stop trying. And, I believe that as long as you continue to try life, you will continue to be a winner. So winners are not people that don't fail. Winners are people that continue to just never give up.
Yeah, I think behind every great success story, right, there's always failures, there's always setbacks, right? Definitely.
So that's one thing I want to let people know and to inspire others. Besides, like I said, I had a great bodybuilding career and a great business career, and I continue to be relevant in the fitness industry, even though we talk about shows like the 1990s, which is, going to close to 30 years ago. But for me, it's great to still have that relevance. And because I still, like you said in my interview, I still have a passion. I still feel like a young kid in doing what I'm doing.
Another thing I wanted to mention to you, Richard, I saw Generation Iron 2 on Netflix, and you were a part of that. And you were talking about the social media aspect of it now and how it's so much different now, because like when we used to read the magazines, when we were both young, getting in the bodybuilding magazines was the ultimate. That was the ultimate compliment to actually make a magazine. And to make a magazine back then, you had to be somebody. You had to be someone who won titles. You had to be a champion. And now these people who are successes on social media, it's not necessarily so. I mean, a lot of these guys don't even compete.
No, it's amazing, and I did talk about it in the interview. I talked about the false gurus that are out there, and I mentioned the name, and unfortunately he passed away, Rich Piano, saying, is that really something, is that really someone that you want to follow? And, a lot of young kids, follow him and thought he was great, showing how he used drugs. And to me, that's not really someone to look up to or look. And I said it in the movie very candidly. And, I was at the premiere and, which was really uncomfortable, is he sat right in front of me when that was being said. But, but you know what? I don't take it back. And he knows my thoughts. I'm old school. I believe in bodybuilding, to me, has been a good thing, and it's been a long term. And as you can see, unfortunately, he passed on, being that the things that he did were not going to be long lasting. I'm going into bodybuilding. I started when I was 13. I was probably someone like you, and now in my 50s, and I'm still going strong. So, this is what the message I want to give to the young millennials out there. It's not about finding some secret potion or figuring out, ways of doing something that's going to give you that edge. It's hard work, commitment, and doing the right thing, with diet, training. And if you do all those things, as I did in bodybuilding, I was successful. And as I did in business, I'm successful. And it lasts longer. That's the big thing that, I try to tell people. So, I thought it was cool that a lot of people, again, see who Rich Gaspari is from the Generation Iron 2, saying, you know what, I really don't feel these social media. You could be a social media star and you can be a bodybuilding star. And that's how it's gone. And some of them cross paths. I'm seeing a lot more pro bodybuilders using social media to grow their awareness because they realize just winning shows is not enough. And as a businessman, I look for athletes to have both of those attributes. But to bring a positive message, you need to bring a positive message to, the people out there that are learning. We were those young aspiring kids that were learning from the magazines. And, and we were learning, in those magazines how to diet properly, how to train properly. And it wasn't sitting there telling you, this is the drug to take. Here's this shortcut. This is what you do. I mean, that wasn't what it was about. So I could be on my soap. I could talk this on another podcast with you all day. I know we're talking about the 1990 Mr. Olympia, which of course has to do with the drug test in Olympia.
Right.
But as as I said, I never denied not using steroids as a competitor. But I do believe every bodybuilder up there was still there from being genetically gifted and working out hard.
Well, that's a great point because it is hard work. And I think, like we said, a lot of these young kids now, we used to read the magazines, and that's where we got our information. But these young kids today, they're getting all their information from YouTube. And if you got some kid who just wants to get into bodybuilding and wants to build their physique, and they're going to go on YouTube, look for information, and they get someone like Boston Lloyd or some young guy who's talking, or Rich Piana, who's talking about all the drugs they're taking, there's no doubt about it. Bodybuilders take steroids, but I think they're overlooking the fact that you also have to work hard. And these guys are just talking about the cycles they're on. And I think a lot of these kids are getting into the sport now, and they're just like, oh, I just got to take this. I got to take this. And they're taking the drugs before they even walk into a gym, and they're just overlooking the whole fact about how hard you have to work, and how hard all the great bodybuilders like yourself and Lee Haney, how hard you guys trained for years before you made it.
Well, that's a point. And, I believe for myself, most definitely steroids were part of just the finishing touches to prevent, when you were dieting very hard to lose muscle or keep or attain as much muscles as you can during the dieting phase when trying to, when I was known to be really shredded. It wasn't for the fact to use them just to grow and use them just to be, that was your point of using steroids, just to grow muscle. It was my proper diet and training and rest. And that's what really, in supplementation, which, I believe in, that really, helped me become a great bodybuilder. That part was, like I said, always the finishing touches at the end to keep you from giving you that 10% edge going in a show.
Before we talk about 1990, Rich, let's talk about like when you were younger and you were a teenager and you started bodybuilding, you started competing, I think around 16. Did you have a plan in mind on what you wanted to do with the sport? I mean, did you say, I want to be a pro bodybuilder and I want to be in the magazines?
You know, it's funny. I did say that. I said that the first time I looked at a magazine. And this is when I was about 12 years old. My friend, and I think I talked about with Rick Drayson, a friend of mine, his father collected old Muscle Builder magazines. And he had a bunch of the magazines in the basement. And I went into when I was playing with my friend, playing ball, somehow we went into his basement. And all of a sudden I saw this, this weight set, and dumbbells and barbell. But I saw this stacks and stacks of magazines. And I started looking at them, and I saw pictures of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno and, Frank Zane and Franco Columbo and Robbie Robinson. And when I looked at these guys, I said, these freaking guys look like superheroes. They look unbelievable. And I'm like, I want to look like that. And I was this skinny 12-year-old kid saying, how do I look like that? And, and I would actually steal a couple of his magazines, bring them home and then bring them back and start reading the articles. And I was only 12. And I wasn't ready really to train, but I was like, how are these people getting this to look like this? And I started learning then, this is something I want to be. I want to be a bodybuilder. And, I want to be I wanted to be famous, wanted to win Mr. Universe. So I had that vision and that thought at 12 years old. And I told my parents, and they're like, are you crazy? I come from, a first generation Italian family, and, they're right from Italy. Basically, they're like, there's two ways to make money in life. You're either going to be, a blue collar worker and learn a trade, or you're going to go to college. And and when you go to college, my father goes, you have to be an engineer. I don't know why it was an engineer. It couldn't be a doctor or a lawyer, but it was an engineer. So those are your choices. You're either going to go to work and you're going to do what I do. You're going to be a mason, or we're going to send you to be an apprentice for a carpenter or a plumber, or you're going to go to college and you're going to become an engineer. And I'm like, I don't like those choices. So I went to, I was a laborer with my dad, and I worked a couple summers, when I was 14, 15, in the hot sun, and, it was 100 degrees picking up blocks and bricks. And my dad goes, that's going to build your body. I go, Dad, this doesn't build your body. It gets up your body. So I was like, I was telling him, I'm going like, listen, this doesn't build your body. I go, you got to lift weights, you got to rest. And I was telling him, he's like, just come to work. You work 8 hours, you'll build your body. So the thing is I wanted to be a bodybuilder. I started training I started picking up weights when I was 13. I got in, I had this weight set in my basement, started training with the weights. And I started reading magazines. I told Rick Drayson, the first book I got was this old book from Bruce Randall. Bruce Randall was from like the late 50s and 60s. And it was this black and white book I somehow got, really cheap at this yard sale. I picked up the book, and there was like bodybuilders. And he was already, way behind. I guess he was like from the late 50s and 60s. But I still got the book, and he had a very comprehensive book on how to train, sets and reps, and he explained all that. And I go, wow, this kind of gives me, a Bible on how to train. So Bruce Randall was my first really like knowledge to know how to train. I got to meet Arnold when I was 13 years old. I went to because I was reading about him, and he was at this local mall. But there he had his book. I think that book was, this was back
Education
in
of a Bodybuilder.
the 70s. Yeah.
Education.
But I didn't have any money to buy the book. I couldn't afford the book. So I waited into this long line, and I had this little scrap of paper, and I go, can you sign this? And I go to Arnold. I go, one day, Arnold, I'm going to be a pro bodybuilder like you, and I'm going to compete in Mr. Olympia, and I'm going to win Mr. Olympia. And Arnold goes, I told my story when I got my my Lifetime Achievement Award at the Arnold Classic. Basically Arnold said to me, he looked at me as this 13-year-old kid, train hard, eat right, and believe in yourself, and you will be someone. So that was my that to me was like so much motivation for Arnold to tell me that. But I just learned as I went and how to train, and really I then got to join this gym, and that's when I really started learning, because then there was other bodybuilders older than me training in this old school gym in the basement. And that's where I got a lot of my knowledge, because I read the magazines, but then I was also watching, some of these older guys in their 20s and 30s and what they're doing. And it was mostly a powerlifting gym, and it was always, you need to gain size. What is it? You can't carve a twig. You got to be a tree. You got to build that bulk, and you got to get big first. And once you get big, then you're going to be able to carve it up. So that was my beginning, phases. And, there was like 15 and 16. I started competing at 15, 16, 17. And I really, my focus was to be a pro bodybuilder right from that point. And, it was something that I don't know what it was, but I knew I wanted to be a bodybuilder.
Yeah. And a lot of people who don't know you from your competition days, and they know you more as the owner of Gaspari Nutrition, they may not realize that you were a great bodybuilder when you were young, because you won the junior nationals at 20 years old. I mean, think about that. If somebody did that today, that would be groundbreaking. I mean, you won the overall junior nationals at only 20.
At 20 years old, went into the first nationals at 20, came in 5th place against some great show. Bob Harris won the show. 2nd place was Rory Littermeyer. 3rd place,
Christian.
3rd place. Oh, Mike Christian. 4th place was Matt Mendenhall, and 5th place was me.
Right.
That was, to me, an accomplishment, because all those guys were already in the magazines, well known. I was this dark horse from New Jersey, competing in the heavyweights in the nationals. And once I went in that show, I got recognized by Ed Connors, who told me, would you, be interested in moving to California and basically manage this gym in Reseda, which then when I looked on the map, I go, wow, that's near Woodland Hills. It means I can see Joe Weider. So I was going to college. Remember I said he was either going to college or, becoming, a bricklayer. I said, well, let me go to college. I don't want to be a bricklayer. But I went my 2 years in college, and, I told my parents, hey, I'm going to move to California and become a bodybuilder. I'm going to manage a gym, and I'm going to go to California. I'm going to have 1 year. I'm going to take a temporary leave of absence at college, and I'm going to go to California and live amongst the bodybuilders, because I want to be with all those guys. And if I don't win in 1 year, I'm going to come back and go back to school. And my parents were crying, and you're quitting college. And but I had to do it. I wanted to move to California. I wanted to be able to see, the bodybuilders that I read about. I wanted to see Tom Platz. I wanted to see Samir Bannout. I wanted to see Arnold. So I moved to California, and there I was, training in a gym in Reseda. And while I was training like a madman, Lee Haney, noticed me, and he goes, hey, kid, would you like to train with me? I'm getting ready for the Mr. Olympia. And, I looked at him, and he was a pro. He already came in 3rd in the Olympia. He was a new pro. And, he was there, and I said, you know what? Shit, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to learn a lot from this guy. Because mind you, all my experience came from a gym that was mostly powerlifting. So my experience in being a bodybuilder was a lot of just heavy lifts. When I trained with Lee Haney, he taught me to, he always used to say, stimulate, don't annihilate. And I learned to train my body properly. I also, one of the first thing he did, I told you, it was always old school, is, bulk up and then carve it. So I was very bulky. I moved to California. I was about 255. And mind you, I competed in the nationals at about, I competed about 208, 210 in the nationals. And when I competed in there, most of those guys were in the 220 range, 225, 230, and taller. So, basically what my plans were to go into the light heavies, win it at 198, and then turn pro. So that was my plan. And when I trained with Lee Haney, I learned a lot of his secrets. All this training, knowledge, it sunk in, and he knew, once I went into those nationals, I won the nationals. And this is what I tell people, and a lot of people don't realize this. The pro cards today, there's a lot of pro cards given out today. And there's, I think, 11 pro cards given out in bodybuilding alone. Well, when I competed, there was only 4. And the only way you can obtain that card is you got to win the nationals. And then once you win the nationals, you got to win the Mr. Universe, the world championships.
Right.
If you don't win that show, then you have to go back.
Right.
And
start all over.
There's been some great bodybuilders that should have been pro, like Rory Littemeyer, Matt Mendenhall. These were guys that it was today they would have been pro, but back then because they had to go back and they always had to compete in the amateur ranks and couldn't get that pro card. It was much harder, I think. Like I said, 4 pros, a heavyweight, a light heavyweight, a middleweight, and a lightweight. That was it.
Right.
And that was the entire world. The world, not the United States. The world.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. I was talking about that with somebody, and that made some great amateurs coming into the pros because it took these guys so long to get their pro card. Some of them, I mean, you got it on your first time pretty much. But a lot of them had to come back. And like, look at Flex Wheeler, how many times it took him.
He's a great example of coming back, and then becoming one of the greatest pros.
Yeah, once he turned pro at that 92 USA, it was like, wow, this guy's going to shake up the pros right when he goes in there. And he did. He won the first Ironman, the Ironman he did, and then the Arnold. I mean, he was a force right when he turned pro,
But there was a lot that never turned pro. Like, I never understood how Rory Littemeyer never turned pro, how Matt Mendenhall never turned pro. The guy I competed at that I beat, he came in second place 3 years in a row, and that was Moses Maldonado. If you remember him,
great
the light heavyweights.
Yeah.
And I beat him for the Nationals in '84, and when I think he lost, he got to go to the World Championships, I think, like 2 times. And he
was there in '82 when Lee went.
Yeah, and he lost. And when he went against me and he lost, I think it retired him because he just said he couldn't do it no more.
Yeah. And another thing people may not realize about that Nationals that you won, Rich, was that you said you didn't get one first place vote, but it was so close between like you and Terwilliger and Moses Maldonado, JJ Marsh.
Yes.
The first place votes were all so separated that you ended up getting a lowest point score to win the class.
I won by straight seconds. Everybody else had first, thirds, fourths. So you're right. I competed against JJ Marsh, Tom Terwilliger, Moses Maldonado. Those were the 3 top guys.
Those were the 3. Yeah.
And then myself. So it was very like you said. I went into that show and to get straight seconds, and it was the first time in the Nationals that a winner was without any first place votes.
Right.
And what's funny? I went into that show really depleted. Like I told you, the year before I competed at 210 in the Nationals. So I went down to 186. I should have been 198. And because I over depleted, it was a little flat. I won more on my my shape, and I squeaked through at 180, whatever it was, 186 to win the Nationals. And not being the biggest guy, but I was shredded. But like I said, when I won the Nationals, and then it was like 2 weeks later, went into the Mr. Universe or the World Championships. I got my weight up a little bit to about 186 to 189 to try to fill out, and won that by squeaking by against the guy who was favored to win from Germany named Josef Gromelis, who turned pro a year later.
You won that in the pose down, didn't you, Rich? Didn't you just win it at the very end?
I won it at the end in the pose down. So it goes to show you, I was a very passionate, driven, focused guy. When people talked about me, they always said, Rich Gaspari, he's not cocky. He's just very confident, and that was my way of winning shows. I'd go into a show saying, if I don't win this show, they're going to kill my family and everyone else if I don't, train as hard as I can to go into the show. And that's how I trained, blood, sweat, and tears. I went to every show with that state of mind. I think it burned me out at the end because I did that from like 15 right up until, I had my injury, which retired me. But that's what I believe I had to do because people with superior genetics that they said were better than me, I had to be better. I had to be more ripped. I had to try to be more symmetrical. Anything I had to do, I had to pose better presentation. All the other things that maybe some other guys were lacking, that's what got me to have that edge.
Yeah, I just did an interview recently with Mike Ashley. We did a video interview, and I asked him at the end of the interview, who were the competitors he really admired. And I think he said Sean Ray and Lee Haney, but he goes, one guy I really admired was Rich Gaspari, because that guy never gave up, man. He was in the trenches. He said you would try so hard just to win these contests. So he had a lot of admiration for you.
Yeah, no, it's just, I had other competitors, respect me for that, because they knew I would never give up. And, like the first time, you got to remember, once I won, I started winning, many shows except for Mr. Olympia, right up into, 88, which my first loss with Lee Labrada. But even there, we had a battle where it was him against me, and, I was able to beat him more times out of 7 shows, 4 out of the 7, that I came first, and then I came in, second out of the 3 shows. He knew that I wasn't giving up, because I was, coming after him, and, whatever I could do to make sure I beat him more times than he beat me. And that's what he always said. He goes, "Man, you're a fighter." And, I take that, as a compliment. I take it in life. Like I said, setbacks can set you back, but you can always fight to move forward. And that's why I said a lot of the attributes from bodybuilding helped me a lot in my life. Sometimes it goes against me in certain ways. I'm a dreamer. I never believe that I have limitations, and sometimes you do, but that's just how I am.
Hey, Rich, talk a little bit about how you changed your training a little bit when you started training with Lee back in '83, and you were getting ready for '84. He was getting ready for the Olympia, but I think you knew that you had to change the look of your physique, come down to light heavyweight, because you said, I remember your legs were really big over your upper body, and you were a little bit blocky, so you had to change the whole look of the symmetry of your physique in order to be successful.
Yes, and reading a lot about like Arnold, basically, bodybuilding is body sculpting. When you listen to him at it, and Pump and Iron, he goes, you look at your body, assess it, and then basically assess what you need to do to really get yourself to look, to look better, to win shows. And, that's what I did when I was in, 83, coming in, winning the junior nationals, and then coming 5th in the nationals. I looked at the pictures, and what I noticed is my legs were very big, because I had really strong legs. I was able to squat 85, and, I followed bodybuilders like Tom Platz, and I would duplicate anything Tom Platz did that I ever read in the magazines. I made sure I could do the same. Whatever he did, I would do. And later I found out that he didn't necessarily do all those crazy lifts, but I would do whatever he did. So, but I assessed my physique. My legs were too blocky from all the heavy lifting from squats. I didn't have a small waist, but because I had a little bit of a wider, say, bone structure. So, but my obliques developed very easily, in doing anything I did. So I used to do weighted abs and stuff, and I needed to slim down my waist. I needed to cap my delts, put more size on my chest and back. So when I looked at training, for the nationals, I said, okay, I need to basically redistribute my weight and bring my legs down, bring my shoulders, my upper body up, bring my waist down. And I did change. What I did is I did a lot more higher reps when it came to legs, lighter weights. I didn't focus. I stopped doing squats completely, because I felt squats were an exercise and deadlifts were an exercise. Although great building exercises, they really made you have a blocky type of physique, because it's kind of a core exercise. When you're doing a deadlift, you're going to use your obliques, lower back, squats as well. You're going to use those. And I said, well, I got to stop doing that. I got to slim my legs down, develop, my hamstrings more. So I did more leg press, hack squats, leg extensions, but, much lighter weights. Where Lee, when I was training with Lee, he was going heavier because he wanted to get his legs bigger, because his legs were kind of his weak point. Yeah. And then with Lee, I focused on really honing in on training a body. Like I said, I was more of a power lifter, and a lot of my lifts were kind of like sloppy. I lifted maybe not with rigid form a lot of times, squeezing the muscle. So, with Lee, kind of, I reassessed my training, watching him train. Everything with him was very, methodical and squeezing a muscle. And I, like I said, that one thing, he always said, stimulate, don't annihilate. It took that and, really focused on building chest and developing it. Doing more when shoulders, I did a lot of presses, overhead presses. Thought that was great for shoulders, but really it was the lateral movements that I focused on. And the lateral movements on my delts, helped me really cap my delts. And and I'm still very good at side laterals because I can still do 80-pound laterals. I swing them a little bit, but I still handle that weight where I do it in form where my thumbs are down, my pinkies are up, my elbows are higher, and really focus on the medial head of the delt to really cap those delts. And that's through the lateral movements that most people think I'm going to do a lot of shoulder presses. No, it's the lateral movement. Right. And then focus on back thickness, the low rows, barbell rows, those type of exercises. And, with abdominal training, very high reps, really trying to stay away from doing anything for obliques. And another thing I did is when I told you I moved to California, I was 255. I said, well, I'm big. And Lee Haney was 255, but he was 6 foot or 5'11". But he goes, you're fat. He goes, you're a fat boy. So I said, I'm not going to be able to see what I'm doing by being this heavy and this bulky. So I started trimming down. I started staying at a lean 220, 215. And then I stayed, that was my bulk weight preparing for the Nationals. So it was more, like I said, it was a science of really focusing on my weaker body parts, doing less on the stronger body parts, trying to really slim down the waist, really focusing, which I'm really happy to see on the classic bodybuilding, is vacuums. I did a lot of vacuums because vacuums gave the illusion that your waist was smaller. And I had a way of twisting my waist. When I did any type of pose, I would twist my waist to make my waist look smaller. I didn't really do straight on all the time. And that way it kind of gave the illusion that my waist was slimmer. So those were things that I learned posing properly to give the illusion that you're, more symmetrical, and just training your body in reassessing what's your weak points, where's your strong points, and just sticking to that focus on what to do to build that. And I think a lot of people don't do that. A lot of bodybuilders, or a lot of people go, they got great arms, they keep training their arms, and they just got great arms and they got skinny legs, or vice versa. So these are things you got to let ego aside and figure out what you're going to do to sculpt your body. Your body is like Arnold would say, it's like a clay statue that you're going to put some muscle here, take away muscle there, and get your body to look the way it should.
So when you started going to the Olympia then, Rich, you did really well right off the bat. You did third place in 85. So then you took second.
Well, remember, I came second place in the Night of the Champions in my first pro debut. Right. And that was because I competed in the universe, and I'm going to say that was in October. The Night of the Champions, which is now the New York Pro, was in May. And I went from being 189 and then basically with a 189 more symmetrical, and then going into the Night of the Champions at 215. So this change in body weight of being this much bigger from 189 to 215, but also more symmetrical, made me a force in bodybuilding very quickly, pushing then Albert Beckles, a veteran bodybuilder, where they felt I should have beaten him. And then the first Olympia, I became a favorite because of that Night of the Champions to then go into that show, my first try at, just turning 22 at third place.
And it wasn't really the weight difference. It was that you were super shredded too, vascular and ripped.
Super shredded.
At 215.
Yes. What I did is I brought a new look into bodybuilding. Yeah, and that was the ability to get my conditioning beyond what other bodybuilders were able to do or ever do. I set a new standard in the sport.
So those years when you took second to Lee Haney from 86 to 88, which one do you think was your best condition out of 86, 87, 88?
I would say my favorite look was 87 because I was much bigger. I was like 222. If you look at those videos, I was very thick. I was also very hard. I would say in today's standard, I was pretty ripped. I wasn't shredded and then in 88, I would say, I peaked at at my best, all around shape and conditioning. But I always felt that 87, I like that size, with condition. I just couldn't get that ultra shredded look.
What did you weigh at that show, Rich, in 87?
I was 222 by the time I made the scales. Wow. So when I went into the Olympia in 89, I was 209 before the prejudge, and I got up to around 212 by the time I got on stage, from the weigh-ins. They had a weigh-in that time. So
yeah,
I gained a lot. That was a lot of size to lose, but I figured they actually told me my waist started getting thick. If you look in this condition, you're going to lose, you're not going to get, you're not going to win. Because what I was trying to do is I was trying to beat Lee Haney by being bigger.
Right.
And, it was actually got me second, but they said if I do it again. So I listened to the judges, and that's why I came in the way I did in 88.
Yeah, it seemed like 88, almost everybody was in great condition. It seemed like everybody was playing their own game, and they weren't trying to chase Lee Haney and beat him on size anymore.
I mean, the guy who got over-conditioned was probably Gary Stridham, who came in way lighter than he should have.
Yeah.
But he was also shredded. Barry DeMay was in his best shape of his life.
Yeah.
He got third, and I was shredded. If I wasn't shredded, maybe Barry would have beaten me because, he was in his all-time best. Lee Labrada came in fourth, and, he was in great shape. And that same year when we went into the Grand Prix, I thought I was going to be, going neck and neck with Barry, but it ended up being Lee Labrada.
Yeah. So let's talk about 1990. That was a different year. They did drug testing that year. Before we talk about that, though, tell me a little bit about meeting Joe and Ben Weider, because I know you had a good relationship with Joe Weider, and he's sort of in the news now because they're making this new movie about him called Bigger, which I think is really cool. They're making a story about Joe and Ben Weider, how they got started. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with Joe. I know you met him right after you won the universe, right?
Yes. Basically, what happened is I told you I moved to California, and my main reason to move to California is to one day, meet Joe Weider at Woodland Hills. And it never really happened. When I was managing the gym, I told you there was opportunities. I met a lot of the photographers and writers that were actually training at the gym that I was managing, in Reseda, one of them being Rick Wayne, who was there. Jerry Candela was another guy, but the issue was that I was heavy. So I was trying to say, hey, can I get into the magazines? They were like, listen, kid, you got to get in shape, to get into the magazine. So it just never happened. So when I got ready and competed in the Nationals, and then I won the universe, the guy to hold my hand up was Joe Weider. Right. And the first thing he goes is, you look great. He goes, do you want to, I'm going to give you an invite to the Mr. Olympia. And that was so way out of my league. My thought at that time was like, he's invited me to the Mr. Olympia. That was my ultimate goal, to compete in the Mr. Olympia. But my ultimate goal was not to compete in the Olympia. My ultimate goal was to win the Olympia. And I go, I'm not ready to win the Olympia. And I was helping my training partner, Lee Haney. My focus was to get him to win the Olympia. He came third, and I was his training partner, and I wanted him to win the Olympia. So I basically gracefully said, Joe, I'm not ready. I thank you for the invite, so I'll pass. And that was my my first encounter really with Joe Weider. Just to have him say that. When I really got to meet Joe Weider, after I won the universe, I moved back to New Jersey, and then, I got ready to train for the Night of the Champions. When I came second in that show, which was a controversial second, Joe Weider called me, said, you look great, kid. Would you like to come and do some photos, with me? And I'm like, my dream came true. I was going to I got photographed already for the Nationals, and the universe, but it was kind of more stage shots and
official photo shoot.
I had some outdoor shots that the photographers had me do, but I didn't really meet Joe. But Joe invited me to California to spend 2 weeks in California to basically have photos done. I'm going to give you a cover, kid. You're going to get a cover. I was like, wow. And I went there, and I got to have lunch with Joe Weider. And I went to his office. He goes, take off your shirt. Let me see what you look like. Showed him what I looked like. He goes, we're going to do a lot of stuff with you. You look like the boy next door. You're just this, innocent American, you look like a nice young kid, That's what he said to me.
Right.
So, you got a good look. We're going to do some good stuff with you, So I was like, wow, this is great. So He always told me, like, just keep working hard, Rich. You got that. You got this, like, boy next door look, and, we love using you for the magazine.
Yeah.
And, I got to, he really did care because, as I competed, in all the other shows and the Olympias and the Pro Worlds, he would always call me, how's your training going? What are you doing? Let's go out. Come out to California. We'll do some really good shots of you. The one thing I did is I always stayed in shape. So when I went out to California, I knew what you look like on stage is one thing, but those photos, they last a lifetime. So a lot of bodybuilders, once they win a show, they pig out and they keep pigging out. So after about 2 days, they're basically done and they got to be sent back home. So I was like, I got to keep dieting. And I did. I kept dieting and looking and keeping myself in great shape. And then Joe loved it because he was able to do so many photos. And I got so many photos done and training articles done. And he always knew when he brought me out that he wouldn't be wasting his time and getting a lot of stuff done on me because I was in shape. Right. So that's one thing he saw in me. I wasn't a guy like they call them 2-day guys. They come in, they win the show, they come out 2 days later, they're fat. Send them back home.
Right.
So basically, I had a good relationship. I've never heard anything, people telling me bad things about him taking advantage of bodybuilders financially or so. He was the type of guy like, you work hard, we're going to put you in the magazine is going to make you famous. And it did. Back then, that was your way of becoming famous. They didn't have the internet. So if you were in these magazines and he had these magazines globally, that was going to make you famous. The thing is back then there was no contract. They didn't pay you. He did offer, he goes, I can give you, I don't know, it's not that much money, a couple $100, $500 a month, or I'm going to give you a full page ad. And he goes, what I would do with that full page ad is he goes, you can sell your pictures and whatever you can do. So I took the ad. And I started putting in stuff on there. I came up with this new age muscle that I had. So I came up with booklets, my photos. I started selling T-shirts. I started selling stuff in the magazine. Yeah. And I started making some good money selling all this stuff. So he saw that to me, it was admirable that he saw me more in just giving a payoff. He goes, I respect you because you look at working hard. He goes, what's the old saying? But you can give someone a fish, but if you teach them to fish, they can have as many fish as they want. What's the saying in the Bible? But he told me that. He's like, you're learning that you need to work for your money and not just be giving you a check. And that's why I had great respect for Joe. And I felt that Joe, to me, is a mentor. Arnold was a mentor when it came to bodybuilding. Joe was a mentor when it came to business. And I learned from Joe. And when I saw what Joe had, this is something maybe other bodybuilders didn't see. I was doing all these photos and I'm in the magazine, but I go, okay, I want to be what Joe's doing. I want to be the guy orchestrating, what other guys, bodybuilders and stuff. I want to do this, not be only the model. I want to be the guy, Right. So I had to figure out how to do it. And that's how I started my supplement company. I said, this is how I'm going to do it. This is going to be my vehicle in doing it.
So when they came up with this idea to do the drug testing then for 1990, when did you guys all hear about that? Was it in like late 89?
I think it was late 89. They said that for the 1990 Olympia, we are going to be doing the drug testing. I think there was a lot of controversy on steroids then. I think they were more brought up to the public eye. Before that, no one really knew what they were, but they were starting to be, demonized, that people were taking drugs to get built. And so
I think it was after that 88 Olympics when Ben Johnson got caught. I think that after that, it just really started. The media was just really all over steroids.
I think that's what stemmed it on was Ben Johnson at the 88 Olympics, where what are these steroids, and these should be taken, and that's what basically, that's what happened. It was, they just decided to do this drug testing, for the 1990 Olympia. And like I said earlier, we would take, and I'm going to be, very frank here because people like, I never took steroids. We would take steroids before a competition, the last, say, 10 to 12, say 12 weeks out. to prevent, while you're dieting very hard, to lose muscle. You know, because you would be able to bulk up. We would basically, in off season, be clean, and then before the show, go on to basically, you know, when we were starting to diet hard, to keep muscle. So, and for myself, known to get ultra shredded, I think that ability to get ultra shredded was also I had great genetics to get lean. I'm still very lean and that's part of my genetics. But to get to that 2% body fat, to really, 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 really lean, I think that, and not lose muscle, like I said before, the steroids were like a finishing touch to get ready for a show. So when I looked at that going into the 1990 Olympia, I was like, shoot, okay, we're going to get to this show. I think when I start dieting, I'm probably going to lose some of my mass, and I may not be able to get as shredded as I normally do.
Right.
And that was the issue at hand.
So when you were getting ready for the whole year then, Rich, I mean, did you just like get off everything all year because you didn't want to, or was it just certain things you would get off of, you know, because, you know, some like the oil-based stuff would test positive, right?
Well, you know, it's kind of like, I didn't really know, but what I was told is certain steroids lasted longer in your body. You know, stay away from steroids like Decadurabolin, stay away from steroids like Winstrol, stay away from any long-lasting or long-acting steroids.
Right.
So I was like, okay, so I can't do Deca, I can't do, you know, Winstrol. What can you do? Anything fast-acting.
Right.
But when you get closer to the show, you can't be on anything. So I did, you know, a couple of cycles of, you know, what was, you know, some of the fast-acting testosterones, you know, and, you know, some orals that we took. But actually, you know, a month from the show, when I got to about 4 weeks out, any fast-acting or orals, I just got off them, you know, completely. And then went into the show because we had to pass a urine test.
Right. How did that affect your training and stuff? Did you notice that it was harder to get ripped or harder to recover?
It was harder to recover, you know, because I just felt like, you know, I was balls to the wall, you know, I pushed myself very hard, and maybe I you know, I should have learned more from natural bodybuilders how to train, you know, for a show. Maybe not doing as much as I usually do, you know, because now my recuperation wasn't as high, but I was pushing myself the same way. I probably should have talked to you, John, because you were a natural bodybuilder, just ask you how to do it. Yeah. But it would have probably, you know, I think, you know, if I would have done it more continually, I think I was going to be able to do it better. But on that first try, you know, basically, I felt like I was not recovering as easily. Dieting was harder. Getting leaner was harder. You know, as I dieted, it just became, you know, usually I was able to get myself really lean very quickly. I seemed like it was just a little bit of a harder, it was harder to get myself leaner. So I had to sacrifice muscle to get myself into condition. And even that, I wasn't still as cut or ripped, shredded as I normally was going into that show.
What did you think about the condition of the other guys? Because there was a lot of guys that failed that test. A lot of people may have forgotten about that now. But a lot of guys failed.
I think Barry failed. Barry DeMay failed.
Yeah.
Who else failed? Mohammed Benaziza failed.
Vinny Comerford.
I know that. I know. And then there was Vince Taylor. He didn't even try to go in the show because he just felt he couldn't do it without. He just said, "I'm not going to do it." I wasn't sure whether
Mike Ashley. He had a knee injury, so he couldn't go in it.
Yeah, so he didn't go in it.
So when you saw the other guys like Lee Labrada, Lee Haney,
Lee Labrada didn't look that good. Lee Haney was nowhere near Lee Haney conditioning.
Or size.
There was one bodybuilder that stood out, and he stood out very much, and that was Mike Christian. Yeah. Mike Christian looked like the old Mike Christian, big as hell. I'm like, what the hell did he do? Because he looked like he normally looked. Right. And then I learned that he took a product called Defend.
That's what I heard too.
Basically, Defend was a product where you would drink this drink. He stayed on a lot of whatever he stayed on. You know, I don't want to speak for him, but Basically, what I was told that he took stuff right up to, you could take certain steroids right up to a point, and then you take this product called Defend, and it actually prevents the metabolites from coming out in your urine, so you can come out. I knew when he had to do the piss test, he had to do it at a specific time because he goes, no, I got to do it now, this time, and he went to do that test. So he learned how to beat the test, which, I was like, fuck, I could have done that, but I didn't. I wasn't able to do it. And, I actually think in the 1990 Olympia, and this is, I thought Mike Christian should have won it,
Yeah.
But I would feel that he should have won the show. And that was the year that I came in fifth, and Lee Labrada got his first, second?
No, he got second the year before too, 89.
Yeah. So he got 2 seconds. No, he got 2 seconds. I got 3 seconds. But anyways, he felt he should have won. He should have won that show. And I actually, like I said, if anyone should have won it, it probably should have been Mike Christian. And that's how I felt with that show.
What do you think about Sean Ray?
He was also way off as well. Did he fail the test, or did he pass the test?
He failed the Arnold, but then he went to the Olympia and he got third.
He got third.
Yeah.
He was also off as well than what he normally looks like, softer. But he never was really he was more like a symmetry shaped guy. He was a little bit, he was softer. I mean, I think he could have been more second than Lee Labrada.
Yeah.
And like I said, I told you Mike Christian should have won. But it was very interesting, that show, because I remember being back there, and I think the whole testing was by Bob Goldman.
Yep.
He was doing all the testing, and I didn't want to fail a test. And, I felt I would be embarrassed for my family and everyone if I failed the test. So I really made sure I went into that show with all intentions. Even it was like a month of being natural. I was natural, the last month, but
Right.
but very little taking into that show.
Yeah.
But anyways, I was able to still come in the top 5, but everyone saw that we were basically shells of what we normally look like. And I think they just pulled it. I think the Weeders looked at this and said, shoot, if we go this route, we're going to lose ticket sales, and people are not going to look at this show to really, this show's going to start losing its people wanting to see it, because they, all in all, they still want to see freaks,
Yeah. If they would have kept going with it, Rich, and they would have tried to improve the drug testing, because I know at that time, the drug testing, I believe it probably today, the drug testing's not infallible. There's always ways around it. But if they would have kept going with it, do you think it would have been good for the sport, or do you think it would have hurt the sport?
I'm not sure if it would have been totally good for the sport. Like I said, I think people are still looking to see the freaks. I mean, there are natural shows out there, and the natural shows have never caught on like the Mr. Olympia did. So I don't really think, I think it would have hurt the sport or hurt the attendance of, people seeing it. This transition to classic, that's a whole different thing where, they're tired of these people with bloated stomachs and, just size monsters, and, trying to bring back the look of what bodybuilders used to look like in our day, where we were like the end of the golden era. But I do believe that it would have hurt bodybuilding more so if they would have just kept, well, what they would have done is, as Olympic athletes in other ways, what are ways, just the way Mike Christian passed that test, what are ways to pass that test to look better? You know what I mean? So maybe I could be wrong. There would have been ways of passing that test, although you're still taking substances, muscle enhancing drugs to still do well.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Olympics. I mean, how many of those guys are really clean? They do testing there, but I think a lot of people cheat those tests in the Olympics. We hear stories all the time about that.
Yeah, I mean, they see the cyclists doing it and ways of masking it. There's all kinds of masking drugs, and there's always one up to, to get ahead of drug testing. So yeah, I'm not really sure. I know that the world championships, the amateur world championships, Mr. Universe, is still drug tested. This is what I'm told. Yeah. And I've been to the world championships, and those guys are tremendous.
Yeah.
I don't see them like being natural.
Right. Right. And another thing too that some people may have forgotten, because it was so far away in 1990, but that WBF was starting right at that time. And I think Vince McMahon was telling a lot of the people, maybe you can attest to this because he probably talked to you, I'm sure. He was telling people, we're not going to do drug testing, so you guys can get as big and freaky as you want if you come over here. You know?
Exactly. I was one of the guys that he tried to sign for that. That's a whole other story, but, you know, I could tell you. But, yeah, I was being primed to get into the WBF, and you know, I got picked up with a limo to, you know, I'm in New Jersey, to the office in Connecticut. You know, I met with Vince and Linda McMahon, and they said, you can do what you want. You'll get as big as you want. This is going to be great. They gave me a check or money that I was going to get paid 3 times more than I ever would have made in bodybuilding. And it was, back then, that was like 1992. It was 1992, correct?
Yeah, I think like 91, 92, they lasted 2 years.
Yeah, they offered me $275,000. And I was like, back then, that was like making $1 million. You know?
A year, yeah. $275,000 a year.
Yeah, that's what I was offered, and you know, other guys as well. So, and I turned it down to stay with Weider. But anyways, you know, I mean, and then what happened to that organization? He had this whole big scandal about him giving steroids to his wrestlers. So then the year later, all the athletes had to be drug tested, and they all looked terrible, except for Gary Strider.
Gary Strider. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Somehow he passed the test.
Right. And the IFBB never went back to the drug testing. So.
And they never went back to the drug testing again. So. Yeah. I mean, was it good? I think they learned that they just kind of. I think what it was also is Ben Weider was trying to get bodybuilding recognized in the Olympics, and one of the one of the demons or one of the things that always preventing that from happening was you guys are on steroids.
Yeah.
And so this is why he wanted to have the Olympia drug tested so that he was able to get, you know, his dream of getting bodybuilding in the Olympics.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that was his lifelong dream. I mean, he talked about it for years and years, and it never happens.
That was the unfortunate thing, and then he passed away. But
it never happened.
No.
Yeah, it was a unique year, but it was something different.
I also was kind of burning out. You know, I told you I went balls to the wall when I went into competition, and you know, I did this since I was 15, and although I was very young, and I was still in my late 20s, I started feeling I just didn't want to do it no more. You know, I was getting myself really just burnt out.
Yeah.
And I started having injuries, and that's where I got into the 91 Olympia, and then from there, I was saying, like, I need to, you know, just put my trunks down and, you know, not compete for a couple years.
Right.
Because I just felt burnt out.
So what's going on now with your company, Rich? Anything new with Gaspari Nutrition? I know you guys are still going strong.
We're still going strong. Like I told you, we went last year, and I went through a whole reorganization and getting partnership with a manufacturer. So we are basically what we call vertically integrated to be able to get better pricing. Came up with 8 new products. So we constantly, you know, reinvent ourselves. You know, it's a very competitive market, the sports nutrition arena. Next year, 2018, will be my 20th anniversary of owning Gaspari Nutrition. So
that's amazing.
I'm proud to say, that I've had this company for 20 years. I've become a legacy brand. You know, so my supplement career is longer than my bodybuilding career. You know,
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's like you said, a lot of millennials and a lot of people know me as the owner of Gaspari Nutrition, but don't necessarily know me as this fierce competitor in bodybuilding. And, you know, and until they start looking at old videos, you know, and following me on Instagram and start seeing like, wow, he's a great bodybuilder. And, you know, it's starting to get these, you know, it's funny. It's like everything comes back. And what's happening now is like people are looking at the classic era. And I think, you know, I want to say this, but the end of the classic era was when Lee Haney, no longer Mr. Olympia, when he, you know, retired. That was 1991. The new winner was Dorian Yates. The first year, he wasn't that big. But then the year later, he brought mass to a whole other level. And that's when it changed the sport. It changed the sport totally.
Absolutely. I think the 1980s was like the last year of the classic physique. You know, I mean, I grew up like when you did, the 70s and 80s, and I think those bodybuilders were really the classic look, you know.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking now, I mean, you see so much on Frank Zane more than ever. Like people and young kids are like, they want to be Frank Zane. And It's so funny. I mean, Frank Zane's 75 years old, but you know, they look at that's perfection. You know, and to the mainstream person, they look at someone like Phil Heath. Although you know, I give him deep respect, they don't want to look like him. Way over muscle. You know, and I don't even know if I want to look like that. You know, to me, it's not what we were looking to look like. You know, at that time.
Right.
But when you look at Classic, I think that class is going to grow. The first year was 1 year. I see the second year, these guys are becoming more and more amazing, you know, because you're seeing like the most symmetrical, you know, gifted people that are able to develop this muscle with these small waists and vacuums and look a certain way. Like I would say the best aesthetic bodybuilder would be someone like a Flex Wheeler, you know, that kind of look. He was never that heavy. And that kind of look now is coming into play in this Classic. And you're going to see greats where you may have people saying, man, I want to look at that show, then look at, you know, the current Mr. Olympia.
Yeah, I think it's happening already. I mean, I think in only the couple of years it's been around, it's really gaining popularity. And like you said, you're going to get some really, really good young talent coming into this who are starting off in that, you know, and I think it's going to really take off. I think if those guys can really improve their posing and pose like you guys did back in the 80s, I think it'll really take off then.
Exactly. The posing has to continually improve.
Right.
That's a whole other debate, but, you know, posing should be scored, which it's not, and that's what also hurt bodybuilding.
Yeah, I agree.
And with these classic physiques, like I said, I've been seeing some guys that I'm just amazed at. Huge followings on Instagram, and so they're being looked at by the mainstream and saying, this is more acceptable. This is beautiful. You know, and I just think bodybuilding just got to a whole other level that's just not where it should be. And that's why I think in the next 3, 4, 5 years, Classic is going to continue growing. I believe that they should make the weight classes slightly higher, because I think some of these guys, I think 5'8" or 7 is like, you know, 180 or it's way too low.
Way too low.
It should be a little higher. And if I do that, or maybe the problem is it's going to be too similar to bodybuilding, but I don't think so, because now, you know, when I competed, it was 5'8", and like I told you, I should have been like 195, you know, 198 as a national, you know, the nationals. And my best weights, if you looked at it, was, you know, anywhere between 210, 215. I told you I liked it when I looked at 222. But if you could have somewhere around 200 pounds at someone 5'8" instead of 178 or 180, I think you're going to see even like greater guys come out at 5'8". We're still in regular bodybuilding. Most light heavyweights are like 5'5". They're not 5'8", right? They're short little guys.
Right. The way they look now is great. So if they increase it just a little bit, I mean, I can't believe they're as big as they are for having those weight limits. Some of them. It's
just that they have it's all genetic structure. You know, they have small bone structure, and you know, like I said, they're trying to emulate. I mean, when Frank Zane won the Olympia, I guess he was 5'8" at about 189. You know, so they're looking at that. You know, where I was slightly bigger, you know, than that. I think they're going to keep playing with it. If they see that it continues to grow, they're going to, I think wherever it goes, it's, you know, it's all going to be up to the people to decide. The more people that go to this Classic, the more it's going to grow, which, you know, I think will be good for the sport. You know, it's another thing looking at, you look at guys from my era, they're still around, guys from the 80s and, you know, early 90s. But then when you start looking at bodybuilders from the mid 90s to 2000, where are they today? A lot of guys have, because you had to get so big, a lot of guys died. A lot of guys are sick. A lot of guys. So I think we were much healthier, you know, because I'm still strong at 54. Right. Yeah, I'm still around 54, and my health is, knock on wood, still good. You talk about some guys from the mid-1990s into the 2000 era, see how their health is.
I mean, look at what we had happen this year. I mean, there were so many deaths, so many unfortunate incidents, you know.
You know, there's guys like Nasser El-Sabati who died, and a lot of bodybuilders like from that mass era that are no longer with us.
Yeah, and I think the Classic could be the new future of the sport, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, so, I mean, like I said, I'm like you. I'm old school. I know you're a good historian. You know, respect. I know you know a lot. you went through the natural, but you also know so much about the IFBB as well.
Yeah.
It's a cool thing. I think it's a good thing because I think bodybuilding was kind of losing it. And now, when Arnold made those statements about guys looking like refrigerators and all that, they didn't like what he was saying. I think all of a sudden there's this change. So what he said, actually, it worked,
Yeah. Yeah. When he said that, it went viral. So it was obvious that a lot of people agreed with him. And they're like, somebody finally said something,
Yeah. It wasn't liked that much by what he was saying, but obviously it did change the sport, and I think it will change where the people want to see it change.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Rich. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us on the podcast. I always enjoy talking to you, and thanks for talking about that. Thanks for talking about that 1990 Olympia. That was a great conversation about that. Thanks for being so open about that. And we'll look for your shows on Netflix. That's really exciting. I'm going to go watch that today.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to either Generation Iron website or to there's installments, and then also they have a deal with Netflix. So I think I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I am too. That sounds great. Well, good luck with that, Rich, and good luck with your company. Congratulations on upcoming 20-year anniversary, and you're doing great stuff.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sean.
All right, Rich. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Bodybuilding Legends podcast. Thanks again to Rich Gaspari for joining us for the show as we talk about the 1990 Mr. Olympia. All right. Join us next week. We're going to be joined by the always controversial, but always very honest Mike Quinn, and he's going to talk about his experience with the 1990 Mr. Olympia as well as many other things. So that will be next week on the Bodybuilding Legends podcast. Join us next week. Thanks again to our sponsors, Florida Alternative Medicine, Redcon One, and Old School Labs for sponsoring this edition of the Bodybuilding Legends podcast. Please make a comment on iTunes if you enjoy listening to the Bodybuilding Legends podcast. We'd love to hear your comments. Check out the bodybuildinglegendsshow.com and get on our mailing list and watch whatever's going on each week on the bodybuildinglegendsshow.com as well as the Bodybuilding Legends podcast. We will see you guys next week. Take care, everybody.